Can you see the screen right now? Okay. Hello everyone. Today our topic is the deficit in visuo-spatial working memory in dyslexic population, systematic review and meta-analysis. This presentation will be separated into 5 parts, which is including introduction, methods, results, and discussion, and then the limitation. In the first part, which is the introduction, we will do a short introduce about the definition of working memory. Working memory is a cognitive system where information is stored and proceed temporarily during complex cognitive tasks. And working memory, which is including 3 parts, which is central executive, the phonological loop, and the Visuo-Spatial sketchpad. The phonological loop is an information which saves phonological information like the language sound, while the Visuo-Spatial sketchpad, which store visual and spatial information like to help us build a mind map. It can be used to create and manipulate visual images, as well as to express a mental map. Phonological loop and Visuo-Spatial sketchpad are also referred to as short-term memory. The central executive is the supervisory system, and it can be responsibility for controlling and manipulating the information contained in 2 lower-level systems. There are some previous studies about Visuo-Spatial working memory. In 1986, Bentley proposed a model of working memory, which is the first time that Visuo-Spatial working memory attracted a great attention, because before this model, the verbal working memory has been studied for a long time. And in 2019, Gray and his colleagues found the assignment of the working memory capacity in important part in measure students' cognitive capacity. In the impairment of working memory can be observed in many language disorders, such as in the developmental language disorder or this topic developmental dyslexia. But in developmental dyslexia, it's arguably as one of the disorders that can be defined with working memory capacity. And the definition of developmental dyslexia is a neurological disorder of genetic origin that specifically affects in reading. The people with this difficulty in developmental dyslexia will have challenging when they are reading, writing, and comprehension in their native language, although they have the average intelligence with their peers or the people with the same age with them. The dyslexic children show indicates in verbal working memory. The growing research provides evidence that the children have suffered, a lot of children with dyslexic children have suffered from the verbal working memory impairment. So there are some previous studies for developmental dyslexia. Actually, there are 2 different opinions on whether the children with developmental dyslexia have impairment in Visuo-Spatial working memory, including Zhang and McGinney, Wang, and a lot of researchers, they support that the children with developmental dyslexia have impairments in Visuo-Spatial working memory. And there are still some researchers like Jennifer, they support that the children with developmental dyslexia do not have impairments in Visuo-Spatial working memory. So our purpose of this study is try to fill the gap in whether the children with developmental dyslexia have impairments in Visuo-Spatial working memory. Zhang studied the topic with meta-analysis in 2009, but he did not get an absolute answer. So because of the new paper weren't published in this 13 years and the new technology weren't used, so we decided to use meta-analysis, this kind of scientific method, to provide a greater statistic power and more confirmatory data analysis to explore the general population to study this topic. So our hypothesis is that the developmental dyslexic population, which this disease have influenced children's visual-spatial working memory capacity and the visual-spatial working memory capacity of healthy population is better than the dyslexic children. So here's our parse for method. And when we are trying to select appropriate articles, the inclusion criteria were applied. There are 4 main points in our inclusion criteria. All the students with developmental dyslexia were included in this research should be diagnosed with developmental dyslexia by experts like children's psychologists, this kind of experts, and they should score at reading fluency and accuracy measure was lower than the other children at the same age. The children typically controlling group, which is our control group in the study, were included, and they should be healthy children with normal intelligence and do not have any kind of other mental disorder. The participant in this study, which defined as children, should be under 18 years old. There are no restrictions regarding in participation's country, gender, race, and publication language. Due to the time and effort limits, this study were identified only in Web of Science database. Web of Science is an extensive, comprehensive database of core general literature index, including science, social science, and arts and humanities. When we are searching the data, we use Boolean search strategy to search for relative records to find broad set possible range of research. The search terms are listed on the screen. The process of research is we first scan the title and abstract of the identified records and then read the full text of the remaining articles. From the flowchart, the research of our exclusion and inclusion articles can be seen. So you can see the article from 65 were reduced to 5 and from 5 to 13. In the data extraction, I will introduce how we exclude article more specifically under the guide by PRISMA statement. The data from 13 selected studies were entered into this spreadsheet, like the table on the screen. The characteristic form including the general information about each study. And in our study, the most important part is the mean age of the participation, which can make sure all the articles included in the study is about the children. The data necessary for the computation of fact size were extracted in this table. You can see there are some mean, standard deviation, and so on. The table is here to show the data to the final articles which we chose. And the data extraction also included the quantified assignment section according to the critical appraisal scale program list on the cohort studies. So you can see there are some our comments for the articles with their quality. And in the data collection and analysis, first author, which is me, I select the abstract and full text independently, and the second author, which is Dr. Zhang, she completed the examination of the studies. The review manager, this kind of technology were used during our research with a version of 5.4. Hydrostree were used to calculate the effect size of each research finding. I-square were used to benchmark the study's heterogeneity, and the fluent part were used to check the publication bias. Given the higher heterogeneity of the studies included and chosen a random effect model to conduct the scientific statistics analysis. Here's a result part of our study. From figure 2, which is about random effect model for set plot for comprehension between developmental dyslexia and our control group. we can see there are 16 studies and their respective, the random effect module release a significance effect and a large effect size, indicating that developmental dyslexia group perform worse than their control group peers. From the figure 3, we can see the heterogeneity were large and indicating undefined source of variability, so there is no detected publication bias. From figure 4, there are 2 studies with Chinese were moved. The random effect module, scientific study, and a large effect size in favor of developmental dyslexia group. From the figure 5, we can see the heterogeneity was large and indicating there are no identified source of variability and there are not detect publication bias. And then we will discuss our research result. The finding in this study is, as a pretext, the significance effect size indicate that developmental dyslexia children perform worse in visual-spatial working memory than the healthy children. To assess the influence of different language in visual-spatial working memory, we can see that the Chinese language is a logographic language, but like English, French, this kind of language is alphabetic language. So we try to assess and move the Chinese from the study to do a subgroup research test. From the main finding in this current study is dyslexic children have impairments in visual-spatial working memory, which is inconsistent with the previous meta-analysis by Swasong in 2009. This result indicates that dyslexic children have impairments in visual-spatial sketchpad, so that developmental dyslexia might be a domain general disorder. This possible explanation happened when previous studies on Chinese dyslexic population. In this, we can see that the Chinese dyslexic children also have impairments in visual-spatial working memory, so there is no matter the language what they speak. However, there is an outlier which is done by Arturi in 2009, which we found during our research. This outlier is so special because the testing method he used is virtual reality test. So during the test, he will put the children in a more real life situation with VR technology. As the author argued, a possible explanation could be that the dyslexic population might perform better on the task that simulate the real world. The subsequent studies also released no statistical difference in performance between dyslexic and healthy university students in VR visual-spatial working memory test. This effect from the VR technology could result from the enhancing performance and the approach at which we choose. Hence, the VR tests are more adapted for children because VR tests are more easier to understand and perform, leading to a more accurate data. Whether the testing method influences the performance of dyslexic children need further investigation. The limitation in our research is due to the time and effort limit, we only have 2 people, so the research is only studied in 1 database. If there are more databases we included, the result might be more accurate. For the further future research, in conclusion, our results enhance evidence to compare with control peers and dyslexic children with deficits in visual-spatial working memory. However, whether the language or test influence the results still need further investigation. And here is any question about my research, you can ask up here.